Hello and welcome back to Black Shirt Wednesday on WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. I'm George Upper, editor-in-chief of the Western Journal. And yet again, I looked down at my notes just before I told you my name. I promise you, I'm not Joe Biden. I do actually remember my name. I am old. I'm not quite that old. I am young enough to remember to remind you to, as always, to click that subscribe button and the bell next to it if you're watching us on YouTube, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you never miss a notification when a new episode goes live. YouTube doesn't want you to watch them, so you gotta get whatever help you can to find out that they're coming live for as long as they let us do it. Anyway, today we have a great lineup of material for you. We've got the only two people in the office with larger heads than mine, Michael Austin.
All right.
Totally accurate. I will get a tape measure.
That's a key part of how hiring decisions are made here.
It's going to be from now on.
Yeah.
Supervising reporter Michael Austin has an update on the battle against critical race theory.
Yes.
And manager of distribution operations.
Publishing operations, I think.
Whatever.
Sounds better.
This guy, Brian, whatever. He's got information on the controversy currently raging. I think it is. I think it's fair.
Yeah,
it's raging controversy around U.S. Olympic gymnast Simone Biles and her recent withdrawal from competition this week. But first, sometimes you see something and it makes you think. Sometimes you see something else and it makes you think. And then something happens and you see those two things together and it really makes you think. That happened just yesterday when we spotted a video on Twitter that put Washington, D.C.'s favorite father-son team together in a way that, let's just say, neither one of them is probably very happy about right now. Logan, you've got that video for us, don't you?
If you have a piece of crack cocaine no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand, 1/4 of $1. We passed a law through the leadership of Senator Thurmond and myself and others, a law that says if you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years. You get no probation. You get nothing other than 5 years in jail. Judge doesn't have a choice. Under our forfeiture statutes, the government can, take everything you own, everything from your car to your house, your bank account, not merely what they confiscate in terms of the dollars from the transaction that you've just got caught engaging in. They can take everything. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society. They are in jail. Away from my mother, your husband, our families. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street.
Well,
it's hard to follow that.
That was
frankly.
sure something.
That was, of course, then Senator Joe Biden bragging about his efforts in the drug war during the 1980s. You love a guy who's going to talk about a piece of crack cocaine. That's a guy really familiar with street lingo. Biden, of course, spearheaded 1984's Comprehensive Control Act, which expanded federal drug penalties and civil asset forfeitures for drug busts, two things that we love around here, federal drug penalties and civil asset forfeiture rules. Which, of course, means that the government can take your stuff with no trial, no guilty verdict. That's all. We love it, as any American would. We love it when the government takes our stuff. He later sponsored the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986, which created a huge disparity in sentencing between crack cocaine users and users of the more traditional white powder cocaine. For no good reason that I can think of. And then Biden co-sponsored the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1988, 2 years later, creating the Office of National Drug Control Policy and therefore putting in place the first drug czar in the federal government, and increasing penalties for possessing and transporting illegal drugs at that time. On the other side of that screen, of course, was Hunter Biden, breaking most of the laws that his father worked so diligently for during his Senate career. And when you just see those two things together, it just gives you a perspective that you didn't have before, maybe, of father and son, and how similar they are, how dissimilar they are. You have to be the judge of that, I suppose. One of Biden's signature issues, guys, throughout his political career, but I mean, he really made a name for it in the 80s. In fact, I think it was 89, George Bush Sr. Proposed some new drug laws, stiffer, harsher drug laws. Biden went on national TV in 1989 saying, doesn't go far enough. We want more. We're not paying for any more prison cells. We need more prison cells to put more people in prison. This was Biden in 1989. This was a signature issue for him throughout his career. Hunter has clearly taken that issue away from him, right? There's no way Biden can speak about drug law, drug policy now. He has no moral ground from which to speak. My question is, how much does that matter in 2021? How much of an issue are illegal drugs in 2021? How much do Biden's voters in particular care about that issue?
I don't think Biden's voters care particularly about drugs for two reasons. One, the left has always pushed the recreational drug use as like, hey, this is totally fine. Don't worry about it. Just do it. Have fun. So there's that aspect. But also, I mean, if we look at it take a step back, a lot of illegal drugs, a lot of the fentanyl, that's the opioid crisis in America, a lot of that does come from our southern border. Mm-hmm. So for Biden to want to combat that would require border security, which we know the left is apparently allergic to.
Probably not a winning topic for him. Yeah, good point. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, no, they're not going to care about any sort of drug-related issues, of course, because most of them are doing drugs, probably. But also just the fact that this is another example of Hunter Biden breaking all the rules, and Joe Biden obviously not acknowledging it or not making sure his son is held accountable. None of those people on the left, they've made it very clear that they don't want any Hunter Biden stories to gain any traction. So they don't care about
How much do you think that matters? Like, how relevant should Hunter Biden be to Joe Biden's political career?
Whataboutisms are played out.
Sure.
They're overused. But in this case, I think it's a good use of them to just think about, what if Donald Trump Jr. had videos like this going around? It would be a media frenzy.
Coverage,
It would be insane. And that's do I think this should be insane news? Not really, but if there was any honesty, any balanced coverage, they would be plastering this everywhere.
So I remember in the 70s, Jimmy Carter, shut up, Brian, had a brother, Billy, and Billy was rustic. He was known, he created his own brand of beer to capitalize on the Carter name, Billy Beer. And so Jimmy Carter got some flack because of his brother, who, frankly, I mean, the word we would use is redneck. Billy Carter was a redneck. I don't mean anything pejorative by that. That's just the kind of guy that he was. A very, kind of salt of the earth American. Jimmy Carter tried to distance himself a lot from that. And, the question even then was, how fair is that? I remember George W. Bush. He had a couple of daughters who went off to college and got in a little trouble drinking in their college days. And, how many people watching this could say the same? It's not an insignificant percentage. But how much should that actually matter? How fair is that?
I think it is tricky. I think it's not fair in the sense that Hunter Biden is not who, I'm assuming Biden's voters, they're not voting for Hunter. They
Sure.
believe in Joe, but Joe was elected as leader of the free world, and part of being a leader is how you nurture and raise people. Like that's and look, I personally know many people who've dealt with the demons of like drug addiction, stuff like that. So I understand. Like I can certainly empathize with Hunter Biden's issues.
Yeah.
Sure,
but to say that this has nothing to do, to say that this doesn't reflect on Joe Biden at all is incredibly naive.
Yeah, I can think of a number of times when people would point out Donald Trump's failings. The man is imperfect. He has issues. We all know that. We all have issues. One of the things I would often say is look at his kids. He's got a bunch of well-adjusted kids. He's got 2 ex-wives, but he's doing something right in his family. Those kids grew up pretty solid, and I would point to that as an example of Trump leading well in at least one area of his life. So I suppose the opposite should apply to Joe Biden.
I think it's more than fair to question someone's leadership chops if they can't properly run a house of like 5 people in a family.
Yeah.
How are they going to run a country of millions and millions? Like that's more than fair to ask.
Yeah, and what's also fair to question is the fact that we know that his son has done so many things that are against the law, and we also know that outside of some public scrutiny, he hasn't really faced any major consequences for that.
Yeah.
And that just goes to show that, if you're in power, if you have powerful family, you can just kind of get away with whatever you want, and that's something that people do not like about Joe Biden, and that's relevant for them to know.
That's a really good point.
Yep.
That does set up the difference between the establishment elite, which really is who the Biden family is, right? Yeah. Versus everybody else, versus we the people, versus Heartland America, however you want to put it. That's the one thing that Donald Trump, I think, did better than anything else as president. If he only accomplished one thing, he really kind of pulled the covers back on that dichotomy, on the existence of the establishment elite and on the complete contempt that they felt for everyone who was not a part of their organization, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And Trump, I don't know that Donald Trump did a great job doing anything about that, honestly, but he really revealed it in a way that nobody else did before. And I think that's so important. And it goes back to Biden's, the whole crack versus powder cocaine thing, right?
Yeah.
Who uses what? Establishment elite, not using the crack so much, much more the powder guys. It's the man on the street, and I'm not defending crack use. Please don't send me those emails. I don't want to read those emails. I'm just saying the establishment elite will defend their own habits, their own flaws, their own vices, and then look at other people and say, yeah, but you are doing that one and you shouldn't be doing that one. Another example of that, Michael, would be how we talk about race in America.
Yeah, and so, critical race theory is spreading through schools across the nation. We keep saying, and when we say critical race theory, okay, so critical race theory is kind of a legal scholarship, field of study.
Right.
What we mean is the ideas that came from critical race theory, that, that every white person in America has a distinct advantage. Every black person has a distinct disadvantage because of this invisible system of forces called systemic racism. They can't actually prove that anyone was being racist, so it's systemic racism.
Right.
Obviously, that's what it has to be.
Sure.
And so these ideas, white privilege and all that stuff, these ideas are being taught at schools everywhere, and parents are standing up to it. Parents and their kids are standing up to it. We've seen dozens of videos of such people standing up at school board meetings.
Right.
They've gone viral for saying, hey, stop indoctrinating our kids. And so, in a special report that we just released this week, we interviewed...
Who wrote that special report, Brian? Do you have any idea who might have authored the special report we released this week?
Well,
no clue at all. No idea.
Yeah.
Well, we had our very own intern, who will soon be an assignment editor, Tara Snyder, conducted several of the interviews that were featured in that piece. But
is that what I asked? Who conducted the interviews in that piece? I thought I'd asked who wrote it.
I wrote the report.
Okay, thank
all
you.
right.
Okay, great.
So,
Hashtag shameless plug.
Like pulling teeth. It's like pulling teeth to get him to plug his own work.
So we interviewed 3 different families who stood out at school board meetings, whether it was their kids or whether it was the parents themselves. We interviewed 3 of them, and they explained to us why they spoke out and what exactly their kids had experienced at school that was so traumatic about critical race theory. And just to get us into this segment, I'd like to show this clip from this little girl. She's a foster child from Fishers, Indiana, explaining how critical race theory, how it caused her psychological harm. So,
example, I was told I have white privilege. How can a child born in an abusive drug and alcohol abuse home who lost her entire biological family that has experienced all forms of abuse and neglect be privileged? If you found a child at 15 months in a home with holes in the floor eating cat poop, would you consider them privileged? Just asking, because when I was told that, I was so upset I cried myself to sleep.
Now, that little girl's parents, Shane and Tina Akers, they spoke with us about, okay, what exactly had she run into at school? And so, they were giving these white privilege lessons. They were teaching that, white people always have an advantage, black people always have a disadvantage. You need to apologize for your privilege. And then they held a special Black Lives Matter week during Black History Month. And during that, they taught a lot of those lessons. And this little girl, who most of her friends are people of color, or children of color, I don't know, just happens to be that way.
Saying children are people?
Yes. But all of her friends are minorities, basically, and all of them decided they ostracized her, and they refused to sit next to her at lunch because she was the privileged white girl. She's the reason that everything is wrong with our lives. Yeah. It's because of this little girl. So that just goes to show you what this sort of indoctrination is actually doing to kids. That's a real life application. And in a lot of these stories on critical race theory, we're not seeing the actual boots on the ground effects.
Yeah.
That is one of them. Another one, Keisha King. She's a friend of the Western Journal. She's written some
She's great.
Op-ed pieces for us. She's fantastic.
Keisha's great.
She spoke out in Florida against this stuff. And when I spoke with her about what her daughter has experienced, she told me that her daughter has been made to feel extremely uncomfortable. Whenever they bring up these sorts of lessons, she feels like she has to think and act a certain way. Otherwise, she's not being black.
Well, that's correct. She does have to. I mean, that is the lesson. That's what they want her to think.
And
she is learning the lesson they're trying to teach her.
And specifically, they were going through a lesson, and this follows up. So, I went to college. I finished up college about 2 years ago, and a lot of these things were being taught in my classes, and this lines up with exactly what I experienced. So, her daughter was going into a literary lesson about some, American literature classics, and the teacher just all of a sudden started asking all these leading questions about, okay, so how is racism found here? What about this is racist? And that is exactly what CRT does. What CRT teaches is if something is written by a white person, it has to be promoting white supremacy.
Right.
There's no other.
Just a matter of finding
That's just what white people do. And I actually have a quote from one of the leading CRT scholars, Robin DiAngelo, who said, "The question is not, did racism take place, but rather, in which ways did racism manifest in this specific context?" So just to break it down, our kids are being taught to see racism everywhere, and it's dividing them. They're avoiding each other at class. They're segregating themselves into little races, into their races and all this. So how do you guys think the battle against CRT is going? Because obviously we've gone so far with all of these school board meetings, with all of our coverage of it from the conservative media. We've really led the charge on this. It seems like it's been exposed for what it is. Then again, we're seeing this stuff is still happening all over the country. So, what do you guys think about that?
I mean, not to be too pessimistic, we're losing. We're losing the war against CRT. Maybe just since I became a dad, I've just grown incredibly soft and weak. But man, my heart hurt for that video clip. That hurt, genuinely.
Yeah.
That hurt me. And for us as a society to come to that, we're losing the CRT war. That's just, it is what it is.
When she says, a 15-year-old girl who's been abused in every way, I think what she didn't say in that sentence is probably the most important part. She didn't list the ways.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty telling and terrible.
Yep.
I am with Brian. The problem with this kind of battle is that it only has to be won once by the progressives, right? Once it's progressed, it's never coming back. And I've actually, this is one of those arguments I'm never going to win with anybody, but I hate the word progressive. I hate using it. It literally is the opposite of true. What the progressives, what the so-called progressives want to do is regress to a time when we didn't have civilization telling us, how to act, how to behave, how to treat other people as if they were all valuable. And has civilization done that perfectly for 2,000 years? Of course not. Don't be stupid. No, it hasn't. But that doesn't mean you throw the whole thing away and just there are no rules. And that's essentially what the progressives want. Do away with all the rules and, start over. And that is disastrous. It's a recipe for disaster. So I think not only are we, I think, losing, and by the way, having said that, let me also say this. Hats off to the parents and the grandparents and the students who go to school board meetings and get involved at that level, because that's the only way to stem the tide. So hats off to them.
100%. And before we move on, I would like to say I do think we might be losing at this particular moment, but the momentum does seem to be shifting in our favor. Yeah. And, I know a year and a half ago, I was getting really nerdy. I was reading all these books about CRT. I was so excited about learning it. But no one knew who it was. There's just this weird phrase. What is this? What are you talking about? And today, it seems like everyone has an opinion on CRT. So many people know exactly what it does now. We have people like James Lindsay and Christopher Rufo basically just educating people. We have classical liberals, conservatives. We're all teaming up on this to try to get this out of public schools. So I think it's trending in the right direction. It seems like more and more parents are going to continue coming forward.
I hope they do.
So as that happens,
that's the only way to win.
Schools are going to stop doing this just to save themselves.
My last thought on white privilege is all I know about that is when I was applying for college and I went to the FAFSA to get my money from the government, there was literally a question that said, "Are you Asian?" Check yes. I literally saw my counting total shoot up like $2,000. I was like, sweet. Because they give you a little tracker of as you're filling out the forms, hey, you have this much scholarship,
your
this much
Asian scholarship. Privilege.
Yeah, I was like, and literally the question was, "Are you Asian?" I was like, yes, and boom, $2,000. Like, sweet.
But probably much more divisive than any conversation about CRT right now is the conversation about Simone Biles.
Yeah, I think conservatives largely agree on CRT.
Yeah, that's true.
Conservatives are apparently widely split on the controversy that has kind of manifested within USA Gymnastics. So on Tuesday, USA Gymnastics put out a statement. Simone has withdrawn from the team final competition due to a medical issue. She will be assessed daily to determine medical clearance of future competitions. People drop out. This happens. But there was a lot of backlash against Biles because she had just come off a very poor performance. And a lot of people kind of interpret that as, oh, things aren't going my way. I'm just going to throw in the towel and call it quits. That is probably way too broad a stroke to look at this issue. And yet that is the way a lot of people are looking at this issue. And just to give you a quick example, I have two tweets queued up. They are both from pretty prominent check marks in the conservative Twitter sphere. You have Matt Walsh on your left saying, "We now have decorated Olympic athletes quitting in the middle of the competition because they're sad. What an absolute embarrassment, but in some ways an appropriate representation of a country that has gone soft." To your right, you have Dan Crenshaw from Texas. "Simone Biles has been making America and Houston proud for years. She has been the woman in the arena, a place that internet trolls know nothing about." I wonder if that was a direct shot at Walsh. "We can be disappointed in her decisions, but until you're the one stepping up to win gold, maybe sit this one out." So this really illustrates to me, and actually even just conversations I've had with coworkers, we are wildly split on this.
Yes, even here.
Yeah, even within this building. So I guess my first question for you guys, just up front, personally, do you guys think she made the right move Do you guys believe that this is a mental health issue and not just her performing bad? Like, and so do you, like, where do you stand on this, just broadly?
Well, okay. I'm going to try to give a good answer and not a bad one. I don't know anything about her situation. I have a feeling that this is the right decision and that, you know, she has some serious issues going on. So, you know, I'm more on the Dan Crenshaw side of things. That being said, I think it's really important that we don't just toss aside the argument the other side is making, because, you know, I don't think it applies to Simone Biles, but I do think it is a trend we're seeing among a lot of people.
That's a really good point.
That are just crying mental illness when really they're anxious or whatever. Yeah. Because we've become so much more accepting of people who are depressed, of people, you know, who have anxiety issues. Now it's really easy for people to use that as an excuse and a crutch. That's 100% true. I don't think that's what's happening with Simone Biles. She has made this country so proud. She is the GOAT of gymnastics. She's amazing. So, you know, the fact that she had to step out.
The Tom Brady of gymnastics.
And I think you might. I don't know if you have more tweets you're going to share or not, but, you know, people have been talking about how in gymnastics, if you're off by a little bit, you know, if you're off your game and you mess up just a little bit, you can seriously hurt yourself, like more than spine. More than almost any other sport.
Which is the other side of the. You know, the I didn't do well, so I'm going to quit. No, it could be I didn't do well, and if that happens again, I might be paralyzed for life.
Yeah.
So maybe I should step back now. I am firmly in the Crenshaw camp here, and I'll give you 3 reasons. One, I really try not to judge. I fail at this all the time, but I really try not to judge other people. Because I do not want them judging me, because I will fail in that judgment all the time. Because I know that I don't live up to my own standards for behavior. So I'm certainly not going to live up to yours. So I do not want to be, I want to be judged by the same rule that I judge other people. And therefore I try not to judge other people at all, because I need grace. One of the values that we hold dear at the Western Journal is grace. You can go to our website and it lists our core values, and that's one of them. And the way we define grace is we give people the benefit of the doubt. And that means that I look at a Simone Biles, and if she says, I don't think it's smart for me to do this right now, I go, you get the benefit of the doubt for me. I agree with you. If that is your judgment call to make, I am on your side. I don't want you to be hurt. That's literally what we say at this company we do. And so I'd be a hypocrite if I did anything else here, because I am supposed to enforce those standards at this workplace. And the other thing is that's kind of a Christian argument. There's also a practical argument here. There is no point talking to somebody who is mentally ill in any way, or experiencing emotional difficulties, whether that's anxiety, whether it's, you know, actual diagnosed mental illness like PTSD or even schizophrenia, depression, whatever it might be. There's no point in going to that person and saying, shape up. It's not.
It's not clearly never met my dad.
I'm not saying people don't do it. I'm just saying that's not going to work. It's not going to work. So you are wasting your time. Why would you want to waste your time, Matt Walsh? Don't you have something more important to tweet about? Why don't you tweet about something that might actually have an effect on somebody's life in a positive way, instead of literally wasting your time, which is what that tweet did. So firmly in the Crenshaw camp here.
Yeah, I mean, for those unaware, I mean, I do agree with Matt Walsh on a lot of things. He is very much in the market of outrage. So, you know.
And I agree. I'm with you. I agree with him probably 96% of his tweets. I go, I kind of wish I'd written that one.
I mean, I'll go 98. I'm like 98%.
But not that one. Not that one.
That is a glaring 2%. All right. So, Mike, you actually broached this briefly, and so I'll kick it to you first. But essentially, you alluded to this. Do you think we've, and this is such a delicate subject, do you think we've babied mental illness too much? Like, have we made it so that
we've lowered the bar?
Yeah, have we lowered the bar too much? Have we made it so, because I get some whiffs. I don't think it's quite as bad, but I get some whiffs from this as we do with everything is just racist. Oh, that's racist. Like, oh, that's like, it feels like we're getting dangerously close to redefining a word in a drastic manner.
So, yeah, I do think we have. And the biggest problem with this has been the conversation around anxiety and depression. So depression 50% of people, or even more than that, I think, experience like really high forms of depression at some point. That doesn't mean that they've faced like extreme levels of clinical depression. There's a huge difference between those things. That's a much smaller percentage of the population. And yet we treat everyone that ever experiences sadness as if they're in that extremely small percentage. So yeah, that we do baby people a lot. And this has some nuance behind it. So Simone Biles, I think that she probably did the right thing. You know, she had that whole Larry Nassar thing come out. She came out as a victim of his, and then this is the first time she's really on the world stage since then. So,
and 2 weeks ago, he's back in the news because the FBI reportedly messed up the handling of the case. And if I'm Simone Biles, I may be sitting there, well, thanks, FBI. I was one of his last victims. Maybe if you'd done something, this wouldn't have happened to me.
So
how do you compete in that headspace?
Yeah. So no judgment on her, but from what I have seen of the people defending her decision, of the people saying like, "Oh, she did what was right for her mental health. This is good." I don't like that rhetoric. Like, I don't like people saying, "Oh, well, whatever's good for you, whatever's best for your mental health," because that it's such a broad umbrella, and you can just be used to abandon any sort of responsibility if it's in the name of, protecting your mental health. Because people have had to go through extreme forms of anxiety, extreme forms of all kinds of mental illnesses to complete their jobs, especially high pressure jobs. So it's dangerous territory we're going into. We should not judge Simone Biles. That's
if everything's racism, nothing's racism, right? If everything's mental illness, nothing is mental illness. Having said that, people who are the victims of abuse often suffer from mental illness, from PTSD, from issues like that. And I can't sit here and tell you that Simone Biles does or does not have the symptoms of any of that. And therefore, I'm going to go back to what I said before and give her grace. I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt. I'm working in the assumption that she's an adult, can make these decisions on her own, weighed the effect of all of this on her own physical health, the effect on her teammates. Don't tell me she doesn't care about her teammates. Of course she does.
Yeah.
She weighed all of that and said, I am sure she said, I don't like this, but I think I have to do it.
And we really need to treat, we can have these discussions about people babying mental health and all of that.
Still give grace.
Yeah, but we have to be careful.
Whenever it's an individual circumstance, we need to give those people the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. It's the same thing with rape accusations. We always give them the benefit of the doubt, but we still, do our due diligence and see what's actually going on.
That's right.
So,
100% agree.
Western Journal does that due diligence every day. That's actually what we are here for. You guys know that. I don't have to tell you this. You know that you can go on mainstream media all day long and get rumor and innuendo and opinion presented to you as fact. We're not going to do that. We'll sometimes give you our opinion. In fact, we often give you our opinion. You might have noticed a little bit of it on this show. But we're going to tell you that's what we're doing. We never tell you this is fact and then give you an opinion. We flat out tell you, here's what we think about this. Here are the facts. Here's why we think they matter, why you should care about them. That differentiates us. It's one thing that differentiates us from the establishment media. We also fight for freedom of the press. We fight for free speech. We fight for freedom of religion. We fight for your right to bear arms. We fight for all of those things because we think they're important. You can help us in that fight today against the establishment elites that we talked about earlier. Not just the Biden family. There are establishment elites in every party in the United States, every political party, and people who are not members of political parties. Those folks are interested in their own benefit, their own wealth, their own power, and not defending your freedom. We're very interested in defending your freedom, in part because we're defending our freedom at the same time. You can help us, support us directly by going to westernjournal.com/join and becoming a member. Literally pennies a day. And for a limited time, we're going to give you 2 months free when you sign up for an annual membership. And that doesn't mean you pay for 12 months and we give you 2 extra months. It means we give you 12 months, you only pay for 10. So that's about 17% off. That is a great deal. And we're seeing lots of people actually this past week or 10 days jumping on that. I don't know how long we're going to be doing that for. It's a limited time. That's literally all they'll tell me. I don't know what the limit is. I just know it's limited. So go to westernjournal.com/join and get in on this deal while you still can. You'll be getting great content that's exclusive to members, but you'll also know that you are supporting the Western Journal in our fight against fake news and establishment media bias. That fight we fight every day, and we need your help. So please come and join us. And with that, we will bid you farewell until the next episode. In fact, I'm going to bid you farewell for like 2 weeks because I'm going on vacation. So you're stuck with these big-headed guys. This big-headed guy is out of here until a week and a half from now. So I will see you when I get back from that. These guys will see you whenever they're on here next. We will see you every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific here on WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. So see you next time. Stay safe.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is that you are joining us. Thank you so much for doing so. I actually want to say aloha, but, you know, as you can all see, we are dressed themed for our beloved editor-in-chief George Upper. It's his birthday today, so we're just going to throw that out.
I'm George Upper, editor-in-chief of the Western Journal, and we have more bounce in Arizona than all y'all combined.
More bounce?
I'm just going to give you a minute to think about that. Deputy Managing Editor Josh Manning is here with me with his hat.
And on my right is Brett, whose last name I now can't remember.
Kershaw.
That's it. I knew it. Like the knife brand.
A little
like
suspense.
The only man who knows Brian Chai's title is Brian Chai, and it is
The Grand Pooh Bear.
Grand Pooh. That's
Grand
fine.
Poobah.
He's director of something.
No, Grand Pooh Bear.
Oh my gosh! Oh no! Oh no! I love this number right
The pep and the step at the end.
That's show he's okay.
And if you're thinking that this shirt makes me look like a hippopotamus on camera, I'm right there with you. Reminding you as always, if you like watching hippopotamus